1 minute. Okay, thank you. One minute, ladies and gentlemen, 1 minute. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Monday, February 1st, 2016. First item, Mr. Jackson, any additional items to the agenda?
Thank you, Worship. For the addendum, there's a notice of motion from Councillor Brennan, and that'll be added as 13A. In addition to the addendum, I have an item under 9C, Property Maintenance Bylaw, and it's removal of number 3, which is 702 Nickel. So that property has since been cleaned up.
Thank you. Thank you. Does council have any additional items? Seeing none, I want to first, before we go to the adoption, I want to first recognize that we're on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nations tonight. Can we have a motion for the adoption of the agenda as amended? So moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is for motion of the adoption of the minutes for the special meeting of council for January 7th, the special open meeting of council for January 11th, and the special open meeting of council for January 14th. Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Thorpe, and any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. There are no presentations tonight. Under the Mayor's report, I'm pleased to announce tonight that Council met in camera and discussed the recommendations from the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation Nominating Committee, and they had the following recommendations which Council has endorsed. That Council, 1, appoint Mr. Rod Saz as the new member of the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation for a term of 3 years. Reappoint Mr. Dan Brady, Ms. Carla Smith, Kelly Bissell, and Signe Madden to the NEDC board for a 3-year term. And renew the appointment of the following board members to the NEDC board. And they include Mr. Andre Sullivan, Mr. Charlie Parker, Mr. Dan Kuchera, Mr. Bill Anderson, Mr. A.J. Hustins, Ms. Gloria Hatfield, Mr. Brad Jones, Mr. Doug Kalsix, Mr. Adrian Legan, Dr. Ralph Nielsen, and Chief John Wesley of the Snuneymuxw First Nations to the board. And that Council further direct staff to notify the NEDC board and the new members, the unsuccessful applicants, and prepare a media release advising of Council's appointments to the NEDC board. Congratulations, that's a very dynamic board, and the committee did a very good job of reviewing a number of new applications. Very good, very well done. Thank you. The next item is under corporate services, and that is development variance permit number DVP 276 at 6524 Portsmouth Road, and the purpose is to obtain council authorization to permit a lot frontage variance in order to facilitate a 3-lot residential subdivision. And it's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to development variance permit 276, pardon me. Is there anyone wishing to speak to development variance permit 276 at 6524 Portsmouth Road? Please come down, sir. We simply need your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Bernard Estes, and I live at 6563 Southampton Road, which is directly behind the subject property.
You might want to move that up a little higher. There you go.
How's everyone doing this evening? My name is Bernard Estes. I live at 6563 Southampton Road, which is directly behind the property that we're discussing this evening. First of all, I'd like to thank council for previously squashing the last variance that they tried to put forward on this property, which happened a couple months ago. And we're very grateful for that. Me and my wife bought this property about 6 months ago. We're directly behind the property that they're trying to subdivide. And we have a little 5-year-old, a little 1-year-old, and we bought this property because it's very private and it's got a nice yard and in a nice neighborhood, and a neighborhood that's low density, and that's why we bought there. And so I would request that this would get squashed again. To throw 3 houses side by side really close together directly in our backyard is, I think, very unfavorable. I'm a realtor in the community, and I know that this will adversely affect our property value. And so that's what I'd like to ask this evening, that again it would be shut down. I'm not sure exactly what they have planned. I have to be completely honest with you, but I know what 3 houses in a backyard looks like. I built houses for 10 years in the community, so thank you very much for hearing.
Thank you. Any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, motion to receive the delegation. Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Any discussion? None. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So we have a staff recommendation that council issue development variance permit DVP 276 at 6524 Portsmouth Road. We have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Pratt. Seconded by? I'll second it. Seconded by Councillor Thorne. Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Fuller.
With regards to the 5-meter wide lane reserve covenant, that would be at the back of the property, so it would give an additional 15 feet that can't be built on. So I don't know if that would address the concerns of the last delegation. Otherwise, I'm thinking I don't see too much of a problem with that. I see that 15 meters wide thing as actually taking into consideration what the delegation was talking about. So I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to staff, my understanding is that this is not a rezoning. This is simply a variance permit. My question to staff through you, Chair, would be, could you just explain to me why this variance is needed?
Thank you, Your Worship. Under the city's zoning bylaw, in order to subdivide properties under this zoning, each property is required to have a minimum road frontage of 15 meters. So in order to create 3 lots, you would need 45 meters of frontage. This property does not have that, so they're asking for a reduction from 15 meters to 12.35 meters, essentially a variance of 2.65 meters for each of the proposed properties.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I just first wish to make a compliment on the formatting of the reports and the agenda package as presented this evening. I find them very easy to navigate, succinct, and to the specifics of the summary points and the manner in which you've presented this new layout and format. So I appreciate that very much. So thank you to those that are responsible for it. My question is in relation to page 10, third bullet point, under summary points. Completion of the proposed subdivision would result in a density of approximately 17 units per hectare. Additionally, secondary suites are permitted on each lot. So it kind of gets overwhelming when you start talking about 17 units per hectare, and when we're talking about this size of property and what the density factor is. And I'll do everything I can not to talk about how dense is dense when we're talking about density. But with each one of these lots having the ability to have a secondary unit on it, is that, so we're talking 6 potential units and 3 units with additional secondary suites. Like I just want to make sure that I understand what 17 units per hectare in site-specific means.
2 things, Your Worship. First of all, the 17 units per hectare does not include the secondary suites. That's just 3 units, 3 single-family homes on a property of this size gives you 17 units per hectare. And again, as was mentioned earlier, it's not a rezoning application, but those numbers were simply put in there to give you some context of this density versus the goal density that's in the official community plan. The second question is, yes, suites are allowed on all of those properties given the zoning and the size of those lots.
Thank you, and if I just may have a follow-up. So you understand my comment about the 17 units per hectare and all that when we're talking in context to the size of property that we're talking about, because it's really, I find that almost to be irrelevant or redundant when we're talking about properties of this size, but I know it's the only comparative thing that we have on the books. And then I go to the 4th bullet, and development densities may range between 50 to 150 units per hectare in corridors. Well, then we're talking about apartment blocks. Then we're talking, so it's a totally different game for me. When we're, can you help me? Like, I'm just really trying to get you to help me with this.
Certainly, Your Worship. First of all, what I would just reconfirm is that statement about the 50 to 150, that's the target density that comes out of the official community plan for corridor designations, which this property happens to fall in. And you're correct. In order to hit that kind of density, you're talking about a mid-rise building form of 4 to 6 stories.
Thank you. And just to follow up again. So when we talk about form and character in neighborhoods, and I know that we've added this corridor designation, and I know that we've added density and small lot subdivisions, and I know we've done a lot of that. Where would I take into consideration form and character of the neighborhood? Where does that fall into the equation of the 17 per hectare, the 50 to 150 units in corridors? Where does all that fit in? I don't find that anywhere.
Your Worship, I'm not sure I understand the question, but if you're asking about the ability to control forming character, if it was a multifamily project, that would come through a development permit process. If you're asking about, how does the forming character of this development relate to the long-term goals and objectives of the official community plan, I would say that you have a road specifically on the north side of Portsmouth, which is very low density in nature, but you have an official community plan that projects something very different. It projects a transition from what's happening on the south side of Portsmouth, where you have commercial businesses, some office, residential of more medium density, and the plan that we have today anticipates that type of building form carrying on the other side of Portsmouth.
I promise this is my last question. It's a short agenda. If this were to be something less than, and I know it's only a 2.65 meter variance that we're even talking about here, but if it was a 2-lot subdivision, does that change anything in relation to the 2.65 meter variance? may it?
Your worship, certainly the owner would have the ability to do a two-lot subdivision because they would meet the frontage requirements based on the size of the property. There'd be no variance required, no process that would be required or approval from council to do that. It would simply be a subdivision that would be considered by the approving officer under existing zoning.
Thank you. And when I was speaking to form and character, I was making reference to the existing properties, the existing homes, the existing neighborhood per se, that clearly already exists, and then how the form and character of what we'd be approving tonight may fit into the existing form and character. That was the point that I was trying to make. Thank you. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, call the question on. It's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Councillor Bestrick noted to be opposed. Thank you. No. Next item. B. Bylaw contravention notices, secondary suites. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to bylaw contravention notices for the properties listed below. The first one is 682 Beaconsfield Road, an unauthorized secondary suite. The second one is 760 Begbie Street, again an illegal secondary suite. 1074 College Drive, an authorized secondary suite, and 63 Porter Road, an authorized secondary suite. Is there anyone wishing to speak to any one of those addresses? 682 Beaconsfield, 760 Begbie, 1074 College Drive, and 63 Porter Road. If not, seeing none, the motion that council direct that the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice at the Land Title Office and Survey Authority of British Columbia on Section 57 of the Community Charter on those properties is listed. Do we have a motion, please? Councillor Pratt. Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, bylaw contravention notice, illegal construction. It's requested the council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to the building deficiencies for 1363 Fielding Road. Is there anyone wishing to speak to 1363 Fielding Road? Seeing none, staff recommendations on page 16, and that is that council direct the corporate officer to file a bylaw contravention notice on the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia under Section 57 of the Community Charter for the property located at 1363 Fielding Road for the illegal construction of an accessory building. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Seeing no discussion, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one is the Advisory Committee Commission minutes, and that is special open City Manager Selection Committee meeting held November 2nd. Mr. Jackson, they're in here. This is a special open. Gotcha. Okay, thank you. It's the introduction of the in-camera. November 13th and December 9th. Shall we do them seriatim? Anyone have any issue with doing them collectively? Okay, as a group? Okay, move and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next one, community services. Downtown free evening and weekend parking review. And the purpose is to obtain council direction regarding the continuation of free evening and weekend parking promotion in downtown Nanaimo. And we have a delegation, Mr. John Cooper, from the Downtown Nanaimo Business Improvement Association. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. We just need your name and address for the record, and you have up to 10 minutes.
John Cooper, 3521 Oak Ridge.
Yep.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to present some of the findings from our one-year pilot project for free parking evenings and weekends in downtown Nanaimo. My name is John Cooper. I'm the founding partner of the Cooper McClintock and Associates RE/MAX real estate team. We operate our team out of the private office located in downtown Nanaimo at 301 Franklin Street in the Old City Quarter. I'm in my 4th term as DNBA president, and I've been involved with the DNBA since its inception in 2009. As most of you know, the DNBA Board of Directors is made up entirely of volunteers, as are the members of each of our respective committees: the Events Committee, our Marketing Committee, our Planning, Development, and Design Committee, our Safety and Security Committee, and the Parking Committee. Our board and these committee members are made up of community volunteers looking to volunteer their time to help make downtown Nanaimo an attractive destination to live, work, and invest. These volunteers' resources are leveraged through a BIA levy that comes direct from our members and is matched by a matching grant from the City of Nanaimo. The return on investment to the City of Nanaimo is exponential, and our most recent pilot project is a perfect example of a project that started out as an idea that would have never made it to implementation without the countless hours of volunteer time that went into working with the City of Nanaimo and the city parking manager. In 2013, our member outreach surveys discovered what most of downtown business owners already knew, that parking and perceptions surrounding parking and parking enforcement were the biggest deterrent to consumers when considering doing business in the downtown. As our mandate relates directly to business improvement, this tangible evidence of what we all suspected spawned the creation of our Parking Committee. Parking in downtown Nanaimo is a complex issue with no easy solutions. The DNBIA understands the balance between building revenues to maintain parking infrastructure and the negative perceptions and competitive disadvantage of commercial districts with pay parking. If we do not generate enough revenue to support parking infrastructure costs, the taxpayers are burdened with the differential. Equally, if we charge too much, our downtown merchants suffer, our local economy suffers, and taxpayers are also burdened with the differential. The DNBA supports pay parking as a demand management tool and understands the economic requirement of capturing revenue to support the maintenance and management of city parking assets. Parking does not create demand. It can only attempt to manage it through policy. The businesses create the demand. We believe that the growth of that demand was being handicapped by antiquated parking policies that had been pieced together through many years of changing public priorities. Over 12 months ago, after 24 months of discussions and negotiations with the parking manager, we all agreed to implement a pilot project and establish free parking evenings and weekends and stat holidays for all city-owned parking in the downtown, with the exception of the Conference Center Parkade and the Harborfront Parkade. These require 24-hour enforcement due to built-in demand. We recommended this policy adjustment with the theory that together we can make the downtown parking experience more enjoyable and convenient for users. We can increase the size of our user group and subsequently increase parking revenues substantially in the future, in the long term. Our goal was to attract people and businesses to our area to engage in commerce and help make downtown more attractive for business development, residential densification, as well as attract more transportation opportunities to the region like the fast ferries, and better utilize existing city infrastructure rather than lose investment to surrounding areas that have a tendency to increase city infrastructure liabilities. We expected that this pilot project would have the greatest short-term impact with the least amount of infrastructure investment, i.e., no special equipment or technology was required to effectively implement the project as it was just an adjustment to enforcement policy. We also forecasted that there would be an immediate increase in positive public perception with a short-term decrease in parking revenues, but that these decreases would be offset in the long term by an increase in demand as businesses were able to get past the threshold of sustainable success and build their markets. Well, the results are in, and our organization could not be happier with the results. Before I get into the details, let me first say that there is still work to be done in parking in downtown Nanaimo, and the DNBIA will continue to monitor perceptions and policy with the idea of improving business and opportunity in the downtown. That said, this pilot project has been a massive success. A member survey conducted this month led to the conclusions that 50% of respondents reported that free parking in evenings and weekends had had a positive impact on their business. 55% of respondents reported that they'd received unsolicited positive public feedback about free parking on evenings and weekends, and 100% of respondents surveyed said they wanted to see the program continue. Some of the anecdotal responses were, please keep it going. It's good for downtown business. It makes the city more tourist-friendly to be able to show off our downtown. It has been a bonus and draws more people downtown. The above results were expected, but what we didn't expect, and Rod Davidson can speak to this in more detail, in such a short time, parking revenues are up and ticketing violations are down, which was another one of our key recommendations at the start of our discussions with the City of Nanaimo. This pilot project is a rare win-win and speaks to the dedication our committee volunteers and BIA staff working cooperatively with the City of Nanaimo to fairly analyze the issue in a productive environment that considers the bigger picture. I'm asking Council to support free parking on evenings and weekends and would be happy to answer any questions you have about the success of this project or parking in general as it relates to downtown Nanaimo. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the delegation? Councillor Beswick.
Thank you, John. Thanks for coming. You know you couldn't get away from at least one or two questions. Thanks for your report. And I'm just curious as to whether or not, is there any more parkades than the Bastion Street Parkade that was part of the pilot project? Is the Bastion Street Parkade the only parkade that is part of the pilot project?
I don't have an inventory of in my head, but I know that every surface lot and parkade, with the exception of the Harbourfront Parkade and the Conference Center Parkade, was included in the pilot study.
That's correct. All of our surface lots on Cavan Street, Wallace Wentworth, and on Selby Street were already free on weekends and evenings, and the Bastion was included into that. Fayette Sutton has always been free on the weekends.
Thank you. And a follow-up, if I'm so Bastion Street Parkade was the new one that was drawn into the already existing parking free on Friday nights, weekends. Thank you. And then it says in the staff report, the areas were monitored during the trial period. The city staff observed, so this was maybe directed to Rod, the city staff observed that an increase in weekend use did occur at the Bastion Street Parkade, and the on-street usage on weekends has now become consistent with the on-street occupancy numbers seen regularly Monday to Friday. So I'm not sure how the Monday to Friday rolls into this, but could you please help me understand what methodologies we used to monitor during the trial period, and if there's statistics, numbers to substantiate the information that was presented, that 50% said they're coming more often and the retailers are all happier, and I'm not surprised that everybody's happier, but I'm just wondering about how we can substantiate the numbers and what city staff used or did to monitor the numbers.
Your Worship, during the last year, our staff have been obviously continuing their monitoring of the downtown parking. With the implementation of the free parking, we have still enforced 2-hour zones and 2-hour parking. We're trying to make sure that we had a consistent turnover in the downtown area. We did utilize the license plate recognition vehicle for that, as well as our people walking. And the report I got back from them was Monday to Friday before we started this free evening and weekend parking. Our downtown Monday to Friday would average over 85% occupancy in the free areas. And what we have seen since we've gone to the free evening and weekend, the metered areas that prior to this would be not used or would be used at a rate of less than 20%, have come up to a Monday to Friday. So the report that I got back is they're averaging 70 to 75% occupancy on Saturdays, which is the change because Sundays we didn't charge for parking beforehand.
Just a follow-up, if I may. So the Monday to Fridays are what they are, and so I'm more specific to the areas were monitored during the period. So the areas that we monitored, I'm assuming, are the areas that weren't free before, but we became free during the pilot project period. So in order for me to substantiate whether it's been successful or not, and it says to me that the areas were monitored during the trial period. City staff observed that an increase in weekend use did occur. So how did we do car counts hourly, just like on Saturdays from 6 p.m. till midnight, so that we knew, like, and what comparators are we using? Did somebody actually physically go and count the cars so that we know that it was used to its maximum or whatever percentage? Because otherwise, it's really just anecdotal stuff.
Your Worship, Bestwick. Unfortunately, we did not have data to compare to from prior years. So we did not do a car count every Saturday, or we did not do car counts monthly. What we did was anecdotally, as we did our patrols, reported back that received on my desk what the occupancy rates were on average for Saturdays through the year. It started very low back in January when we first started this, and it had increased through the year, so that by the time October, November, December came, that's where the figures for this report came, that the usage rates were consistent now with the Monday to Friday rates.
Thank you. So we will have numbers in 2016 to do comparative data with from 2015, because we're actually using a method to count cars.
And we will be doing that going forward. We'll actually have counts.
Thank you.
Speak a little bit to that. The goal of the project originally was that we'd had a lot of negative perception about parking, and so it was about how we can increase the positive perceptions around parking and minimize the impact on revenue. And so there was a lot of confusion out there in the public as what was free when is it free, when is it? We wanted to consolidate that to a consistent message: free parking evenings and weekends, and increase positive perceptions and minimize impact. And this was the easiest way to do that. And so the measurable results are: what are public perceptions? They've improved. Where's revenue at? We expected a decrease. We actually had an increase. So that was the outcome of the pilot project from my perspective.
Thank you. You're back in the queue, Councillor Bestwick, so Councillor Thorpe's next. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the delegation. Mr. Cooper, thanks for coming this evening and for giving us this positive report. I'm so glad that you consider it a successful trial. I certainly supported this idea, and I'm impressed with the numbers that you've shown us. Somewhat subjective in areas, but
absolutely.
But we understand that. I'm not surprised that the parkade revenue is up, actually, but I am a little bit surprised that the on-street parking revenue is showing an increase. Would you attribute that to greater volume or higher rates, or a combination of both, or something else?
I'd have to really lean on Rod. We didn't get any of the detailed financial information. We were just going with his reports. Overall, I'm asking, because again, we forecasted that there'd be a short-term decrease. So I'm sort of saying, hey, how's overall income? And he's saying, overall, we're up. So he could probably speak to where the increases are. Again, our goal from the project was to have something to promote, to really give people a reason to go downtown, and being able to fly that free evenings and weekends flag out into the community was something we couldn't do before, because we'd have to have about 9 lines, well, except here, except here, except here, except here, and except between these times, so it wouldn't have worked. So the idea was to give us something, a promotional tool, to encourage people to come down during what we would consider low demand times. So that was our goal. But the outcome was overall, whether you can attribute the overall increases to this campaign, I think it's just a piece of that.
All right, thank you. And I certainly understand the goal of the promotion.
Yeah.
A follow-up, if I may, through the chair to staff. Mr. Davidson, do you have any comment on the reason for the increase? Anything you can point the finger at?
Generally speaking, the on-street revenue increase will be attributed directly to the raise in parking rates. The occupancy rates have remained consistent, so okay. It'll be directly to the increase in parking rates.
Good to know. Thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Please don't take my comments previously wrong. My perception about parking downtown has been a constant struggle. So every efforts that can be made to address the parking downtown perceptions and the optics of not being able to find a spot and close enough and all of those things and near the front door of the whatever, and it costs too much, and I got a ticket, and all that stuff. So I get all that. My only questions were about how we're measuring the analytics of the success of the program. And I get retailers being happier, and I get that, and people shopping downtown, that's fine. But we're being asked to make an objective choice and decision about whether we collect more revenue or parking or not, and if we increase it or whatever. So the subjective stuff for me, that's all nice, and I'm really thrilled about it as much as Councillor Thorpe is. But the analytics for me, and this goes to our parking division too, I need to know the numbers on Saturdays on the Bastion Parkade that was added into the free equation that's already there. I'm not asking that we count every, but at 9 o'clock on Saturday nights, how many cars are in here? And that should give us a pretty good piece of data. And that's all I'm looking for, because if we're going to do this over time, then I just want to know the data. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to say, before there's no more speakers, I just wanted to say that Councillor Besser brings up a good point, and we should, in the future, if we're going to get into these experiments, if you will, we as council should lay that information out, what goals, specifically with respect to statistical data gathering, that we should give that direction going in. Interesting, I didn't realize there's a professor at the University of Los Angeles, UCLA, who studies parking consistently and has done it for years. And one of the things that he says in his in one of the research papers that I was looking at was that you know you're successful when you can have one empty spot per block, per city block. You're not too high, you're not too low, you're just right. If you can never find a parking space, you're probably too low. If you can find two, you're probably a wee bit too high. I just found that quite fascinating. And also at Bastion, of course, there's been a lot of economic activity, particularly with the Real Estate Webmasters Group. And I know that he's purchased a tremendous amount of parking spaces. I don't know what the number is, but I understand it's quite substantial. He almost has some ownership. The principal almost believes he has ownership in the Bastion Street Parkade at this point. But that it's been the increase in activity that's also caused this good fortune. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Motion to receive the delegation. Councillor Kemp, seconded by Councillor Brennan. Call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. So now,
move the recommendation that council endorse
do we have a seconder? Councillor Fuller. Thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Very good. Next item, 9B, asphalt paving and gravel supply tender. And the purpose is to advise council of a public tender call of $250,000 and above in accordance with council's purchasing bylaw. Staff recommendation on page 27 that council receive for information the report pertaining to the asphalt paving and gravel supply tender. And do we have a mover to get on the floor? Okay, moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Beswick. Any discussion? Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question to the staff, maybe a silly question, but I see the contract it's pushing $2.5 million, and for the amount of work we do, is the contracting out the best product, best for the best product, but also is it best for $1 or if we did it in-house? Just a question because I have no clue. I was wondering how much bang the buck we get for $2.5 million, and should we do it in-house or carry on outsourcing it? Thank you.
Okay, to answer your question, this contract there'll be 4 tenders. Some of the materials purchased through this contract support our in-house forces. So when we buy the gravels for our work or we buy asphalt for the roads crew to do patching, it will come out of this contract. And some of the patching as well supports our in-house crew construction projects. The contract comes back and patches the road after those capital projects are complete.
Just to wrap up, Mr. Mayor, so So I get the in-house. So for when we see other contractors, non-city staff paving roads in our beautiful city, is that part of this budget, this contract, or is that totally separate?
There will be a contract that's for patching, and there'll also be a contract that supports our road rehab program. So that where we're doing the major road paving and overlays, that will be a tender as well.
Okay, so I don't think I'm not sure if I'm being clear. So it's financially better for the city to do it in this manner, or potentially could we look at in-house and doing it for best bang for a buck? That's the question. Is financially, what's the better way to do it? The way we are, or maybe in-house?
I would say this contract, like when we do patching in-house, and we do patching through Hub City, and that's a decision as far as workloads and the size of the job and things like that. So I think it takes advantage of both of those. Like we do in-house patching, and we also do a contract patching, depending on the scale of the work.
And Councillor Yoakum, I think one of the things that I had a discussion with staff about this because of the dollar figure, and I think what is innovative about this is instead of having bidders just on all of it, it's broken down into different areas to encourage more bids to come forward. And how it's structured, but your question about is it more cost effective to do it in-house or not is something that would be considered during the core services review.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, thank you. How many parts are to this contract of paving? The curbing included, gravel supply, asphalt supply. There's a number of parts to this, is there not, for the 2.4?
Yeah, that's correct. There'll be a gravel supply contract. There'll be a bulk asphalt supply contract. There will be a road patching contract and then a road paving contract. And the road paving supports our road rehab program.
Curb and gutters? No, just
there won't be any, our sidewalks now are tending to contract those out individually rather than run it as through this tender.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I understand completely the $250,000 plus, and we've bundled this into 4 distinct contracts for asphalt, for gravel, for patching, for otherwise road paving. Some done internally, some done externally. If we are any of those pieces less than $250,000, so patching done by us, or in order to get, the point that I'm trying to get to is any of this less than $250,000 when we're talking 4 contracts?
All 4 contracts will be over $250,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Kipp, can you take the meeting for a few minutes, please? Just going into here, and 3's been pulled.
all 3 has been pulled. Okay, property maintenance bylaw 1990 number 3704. Purpose is to obtain council authorization to endorse council property maintenance bylaw. It will be requested that anyone wishing to speak to the respect to the property maintenance properties listed below. One has been pulled, but does anyone wish to speak to 306 and 310 Cordon Street? Do I have to ask 3 times, or?
It's been the practice.
Yeah, for the second time, speaking to 306, 310 Gordon Street, and for the third time, seeing no speakers. And 191 Calder Road. Is there anyone wishing to speak to 191 Calder? For the second time, 191 Calder, and for the third time, request anyone to speak. Failing that, I request a motion that council pursuant to property maintenance bylaw 1990 3704.
Your Worship, if you turn the page, there's additional ones.
Oh, come on. I'm trying to get rid of these, eh? Okay, and then 16 Needham Street. For the first time, second time, 16 Needham Street. Anyone wishing to speak? For the third time, anyone wishing to speak to Needham Street? Going on, 615 Milton Street. Anyone wishing to speak to 615 Milton Street? Anyone wishing to speak to 615 Milton Street for the second time and for the third time, 615 Milton Street? Moving on, 1357 Fielding Road. Anyone wishing to speak to 1357 Fielding? For the second time, 1357 Fielding, and for the third time, 1357 Fielding Road. Failing that, I need a motion that council pursuant to property maintenance bylaw 1990, number 3704, direct the owners of the following properties to remove the materials as listed below from the premises within 14 days, or the work will be done by the city or its agents at the owner's cost. Motion? So moved. Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion? Okay, calling the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now, bylaws. No accompanying. Oh.
Sorry, Acting Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Yocum.
I was thinking that last list, and so I should have spoke earlier. Nothing to those lists, but we do residentials. Do we just do the same? Do we do the same part? I should know this after a year for businesses, because I know we have a delegation that comes forward and points out businesses around town that are sort of just as disarray, eyesore as those. So in the future, I'd like us to also. There is a lot of businesses out there that definitely look equally as unpleasant to the eye as those pictures. Thank you. Just as more of a comment.
I think staff has a comment.
Your Worship, to Councillor Yocum, yes, we do get complaints on commercial properties as well, but it is complaint-driven, and the tendency is to see more for residential. But you're very right. From time to time, commercial properties also get the same treatment.
So, moving on, part number 10, bylaws with no accompanying report. Any motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2015 number 4500.092, that is ZA 51 general text and mapping amendments, be adopted. So moved. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Pratt. I see no discussion. Call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Second bylaw, motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2015 number 4500.093 to provide the definition of a wine store be adopted. So moved. Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Seeing no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Correspondence not related to council, there's none. Council appointments. Are we doing these appointments now? Yes. Okay. So, at a special in-camera council meeting held January 14, 2015, council appointed Mrs. Erin McClelland as the primary representative and Mr. Mel Shang as her alternate to fill the environment sector representative position on the advisory committee on the environment sustainability for the term ending 2018 March 31. So I need a motion for that appointment? No, just an appointment. Thank you very much. So I have a notice of motion now. Councillor Brennan?
Mayor, this is my notice of motion that council request a staff report that discusses ways, including dedicated seats for representatives from the cycling and disability communities, to ensure that the Planning and Transportation Advisory Committee has a clear and in-depth understanding of accessibility issues and solutions related to transportation and planning. The dedicated seats would be filled by a representative from a biking advocacy group that represents all forms of cycling, including those who are involved in active transportation and urban development planning, and a representative with personal knowledge of ways to share roads safely with pedestrians who use ambulatory assistive devices like wheelchairs and walkers.
Thank you very much. Well, that's just a notice of motion. Thank you very much. Next item. No other business and question period. Anyone wishing to feel any questions concerning the agenda items? Seeing none, motion to go to close, to adjourn.
That's correct. You adjourn this meeting, and then you would reconvene the other one.
Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn and reconvene the in-camera meeting. Thank you. Seconded? Councillor, you got Councillor Fuller as seconding? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.